impressed as we kicked off the statewide gathering, and it really marked a milestone for the pandemic, providing a time for reflection. And as I look around the Zoom screen, I see so many of the faces who stepped up to meet the challenge of food insecurity and our local food access. For me, I think about the New Hampshire Food Bank and those mobile food pantries. The state staff, I saw Misty. I think about Christy Langlos, who's one of our food partners up here in Coos County, and the lines of people who wait for the food. But you guys have just been amazing with the work that you've done in getting food out to those vulnerable populations. Our school food service staff, how they pivoted for home food deliveries, and those school buses that so many of us saw are moving throughout the state to make sure students were fed. So where are we today? And the infographic that we're using for the presentation I'm giving you to set the stage, just before the pandemic hit, we were seeing a decline when it came to food insecurity levels. But now 1 in 6 of the household, that's 2 times the rate at the beginning of 2020. And so it's just amazing. And what really hits hard for us, and so many of us, it's the children, and that those numbers just really continue to alarm us. But however, as Granite Staters, we're always finding that silver lining, and we know that some of that benefit of the federal nutrition programs that really helps our local economy, and you can see with that yellow slide what that does do for us. And we heard yesterday, and I saw Gavin's on, we know that the local foods are hitting a high mark, and that's one of the things that we talk about with our leadership team, is that really it's made an impact, and we hope that that's going to continue even when we go back and we're face to face, and that they'll continue to be supported by our audience. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Erin. So what do we know about support and connections? So participation continues to be an issue. We know we can do better with federal programs when it comes to enrollment. And SNAP, WIC, I'm digging deep into some of our research briefs right now, and it continues to be an issue. With Nutrition Connections, our work, we have the SNAP Ed contract for the state, and we see that decline oftentimes with our SNAP enrollment, and we really try to figure out with our partners, how can we get more people on, and even with COVID, and we'll look at the barriers in a second. But for me, it's because of partnering with schools, we see the breakfast program. We're 3rd at the bottom in the nation, and even with our fresh fruit and veggie program dollars, they're not being spent. The barriers are consistent. This is stuff that we've seen for a long time. And even though our partners were, with our Food Access Coalition, we talk about this. We have people working with policy right now and trying to work through these things. And we know that we want to make sure that with these barriers, that the applications are still tough for our audience to work through. Transportation, anytime we have a listening session, it's an issue. It's an issue. The other thing that we know is that even trying to get people to use the food is a difficult piece. And through our SNAP Ed programming and trying to get people, even with Cooking Matters, we're trying to get people to understand how to use that food. And so taste testing, nutrition ed programs is always something we try. So messaging and communication, they're so important. So one of the examples you're going to see, UNH Extension saw this early on with the pandemic. So in early March, Nutrition Connection staff members Brooke Kelleher and Sarah Oberly saw the need for connecting food resources for New Hampshire's most vulnerable population. They joined forces with State Extension GIS specialist Shane Bratt to create the New Hampshire Food Access Map. Sarah serves as an extension teacher focusing on food access policy, system, and policy environmental change work. She's also a registered dietitian, so she gets to supervise our UNH interns. Brooke recently joined our team. It was a year ago, right during the pandemic, and she's going to be moving to our Stratford County office and facilitating our nutrition direct education. One of the things I love about Brooke is that she had served as a food corps member before she came to our UNH extension, and is just one of our brilliant staff team members. And so you'll hear more from them. And now I'm going to turn it over to my team member, Erin. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Hale with the New Hampshire Food Alliance. It's wonderful to see you all here today. Thanks, Heidi, for the intro and some of the context. And before we jump into to hear from some of our presenters today, I just want to also echo that the work that we'll be hearing about regarding increasing and improving food access and food security is really part of the mission of the Food Alliance in creating a more equitable and just food system here in New Hampshire. And that we saw this last year that COVID really highlighted and amplified the existing inequities, racial and economic inequities that we have here in our state and really across the country and the globe. So we recognize that there are some of these deep systemic inequities that exist that are really at the root causes of food insecurity and food access. And ultimately, our collaborations together are trying to get both at the root causes and also at just making sure that people aren't going hungry. So we're trying sort of multi-pronged approaches, and collaboration is really at the root of all of this. So I think the programs and the initiatives that we're going to hear about today are really going to highlight that impact of collaboration and networking to create lasting solutions here in our state. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lauren Griswold, who works with vital communities in the Upper Valley. And Lauren has been helping to lead the Vermont Everyone Eats program, connecting restaurants with food pantries and people in need of food. And they're looking to expand this program into New Hampshire. So that's one of the things we're gonna discuss and talk about today. So Lauren, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that you can go ahead and share your screen.
All right, thanks so much, Erin.
Sure, welcome.
So yeah, Erin, thank you so much for the intro, and thanks for having me and for this opportunity to share about this initiative. It's so exciting to see these networks really strengthening in New Hampshire and feeling like we've got such a great team here to puzzle on these ideas and make moves on them. So I'm just really excited to be here sharing today. Yeah, so as Erin said, I work at Vital Communities based in White River Junction. We're a nonprofit organization that serves the 69-town region of the Upper Valley, both sides of the river, Vermont and New Hampshire. And indeed, I am here today to share a little enthusiasm about a really promising pandemic response that we have been working on the Vermont side of our region, and are enthusiastic to see what potential there is to bring it to New Hampshire in a significant way. So today I'm going to try and be as brief as possible to leave time for questions. I'm just going to share the background of what this program has looked like in Vermont. It's called Vermont Everyone Eats. And then to discuss what's happening in New Hampshire and where we might be able to bring it. So for starters, in Vermont, Vermont Everyone Eats is a statewide program to coordinate it throughout the entire state. The statewide team basically kind of delegated local operations to 14 regional community hubs throughout the state who organize the efforts in their little region. So I'm coordinating the Upper Valley one. Upper Valley Everyone Eats is what we call it. We're working really closely with Listen and the Upper Valley Haven, who are kind of like our distribution hubs. And SEVCA is the statewide organizing team, and the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development is our ultimate funder. So the program, on its face, the program pays Vermont restaurants $10 a meal to prepare free meals for Vermonters in need. The program has 3 primary goals. One is providing a revenue stream for hard-hit restaurants. The second is providing food for Vermonters in need. And the third is kicking some of that benefit, some of that impact back to Vermont farmers and food processors by stipulating that 10% of meal ingredient costs need to be sourced locally. So you can see it's really a pandemic economic development stimulus program. It was originally funded with CARES Act funding, and in 2021 is funded by FEMA reimbursement. The program is functioning at a pretty high level, funding and impact-wise. Throughout the state is the state's restaurants that are participating prepare, I think it's over 30,000 meals a week for Vermonters in need. So per week, that is $300,000 of restaurant revenue, because that is $10 a meal. So this is serious stimulus for our restaurants. They are, the restaurants in the Upper Valley that we work with are calling it a lifesaver. They're able to keep the doors open when they otherwise wouldn't. They're able to hire, they would have been reducing staff. They're able to hire, maybe 3 staff back because of this revenue. So there's the economic development of just helping these businesses stay afloat to get to a place where, vaccines will be, where we'll all be vaccinated and we can resume normal life, supporting our local restaurants as we once did. But it's also economic development in the way that we're keeping these jobs in place. The folks who work at these restaurants who, if they weren't employed, would be in a much more difficult financial position. So that even that economic development piece is a little bit layered, I think, in terms of food security, because we're helping those employees food security. What I've done here is I've got this presentation that I would love to share with you guys. I'm gonna just breeze through the bulk of it in the name of brevity, but I think I'll post a link in the chat to it so that if you guys are curious, you want to learn more, there's a lot more detail here to pour through it, but I'm just gonna clip us right through. In the Upper Valley, we have 7 restaurants. We're benefiting, I think it's like over 35 local farms and food processors. We have over 40 meal sites. Look at this list, it's really thorough. Most of them are food pantries and schools. For schools, I have to be clear, our meals are never substituted for school meals. They're passed out as food assistance, especially as schools are playing more and more of that role in their community. Here's our impact just in the Upper Valley, on the Vermont side of the Upper Valley since early September. Over 66,000 meals, over 45,000 people served. At $10 a meal, that's over $500,000 in restaurant revenue, a big injection into our local food service economy. And our restaurants are collectively averaging at 38% local sourcing for their ingredients by cost, which is pretty amazing. I mean, some of our restaurants, local sourcing has been a big part of their mission since they became a restaurant. Some of them, it's brand new. So this is a really beautiful part of the program. And over $44,000 of local farm and food processor revenue. Some photos. So the meals are individually packaged, nutritionally rounded, and of course have that local sourcing piece. Here's some examples from Piecemeal Pies. Here's the chef and owner at Piecemeal Pies passing meals off to the executive director of the Thompson Senior Center in Woodstock. We've got some good quotes in here. Our restaurant, or our food business, Global Village Foods, preparing frozen meals for the Haven there. Maple Street Catering, meals for listens, free lunches and dinners in White River Junction. Lots of food prep at Global Village Foods and the Windsor Diner. So yeah, a little bit of funding background, which I've already covered. It's ultimately mostly federal funding, although that FEMA reimbursement is at 75%. So the state is making a significant financial contribution even at 25%. So here's kind of the exciting part. We as a bi-state organization, it's tough when we've got a really impactful program on one side of the border and due to state support, we can't just cross it over. So we've been puzzling on this for a while. How can we bring this into New Hampshire? We've seen the impact in our region. We know it's a really wonderful program. How can we bring it across the river? So over the past few months, we've been hearing about other examples that have co-evolved in New Hampshire, which is really amazing. So the Community Kitchen of Keene, a partnership between the Black Trumpet and Gather, Community Meals to Go, the Monadnock Restaurant Project. There's a lot going on. I mean, I think this idea is really, when people hear it, when people hear that like 3-part mission, or even just the double mission of supporting restaurants in need and supporting folks in need, I think the idea really registers with people. People are like, wow, this is so clever. But at the same time, it's also really intuitive. It also just makes sense. Restaurants are hurting, people are hurting. Restaurants make food, people need food. Let's connect to them. So it kind of makes sense that this idea that Vermont Everyone Eats is not the only incident of it cropping up. In fact, it's been cropping up all over the country. I've got links here. The New York Times posted about other examples around the such a millennial, wrote an article about plenty of other examples around the country. And there's an op-ed from the Washington Post linked there as well. So there's a lot of momentum for this as a solution to business and household financial woes right now. And we just want to, we are interested in dialing up the momentum here in New Hampshire and seeing if we can take this support around the state, these pre-existing initiatives, and rally and kind of herd that momentum into something bigger. Because what if we could generate support for something along the lines of a statewide New Hampshire Everyone Eats, a region-wide New Hampshire Everyone Eats in the Monadnock or in the Upper Valley? Like, what would that look like? So we are getting going in Claremont with a small pilot funded by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. We're really excited to put another example in the pot here of how powerful this can be. We're working with 3 restaurants in town there and 1 meal site, the Claremont Soup Kitchen. We're planning on a 10-week program starting later this month through May, doing just under 2,000 meals total, so just under $20,000 in restaurant revenue. Our hope with this, you know, in full transparency, is to use it as an example of the impact this program can have and to try and generate larger support in the state. So we're really excited about this. You know, the more I talk about it with folks, people like the idea. I don't know. I know it would be a big, amazing accomplishment to get something like this going for the state. So sometimes I'm kind of like, oh, it's so big. Like, is it feasible? Is support feasible for something this big? But at the same time, I keep talking to people and people are excited. And I'm really excited to see where it can go. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, or if anybody would like me to kind of speak more about one part of the programming or the potential in New Hampshire.
So thank you so much, Lauren. If you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen so we can see folks for our discussion. Yeah. I would encourage folks to put questions in chat. I doubt we're going to have time to do a full-on question Q&A session right now, just because we have a couple other folks we definitely need to hear from today too, but we have time for a couple questions if folks want to put those in chat. I also want to let you guys know that I just put in the chat as well, there's a link to a Google form, a little survey where if you'd like to get on the list so that Lauren can keep you updated about what's happening regarding a New Hampshire Everyone Eats program, you can click your interest in that. Or just if you're interested in learning more about all the different programs we're highlighting today, I would encourage you guys to click on that link and we can keep you updated, put you on the Food Access Coalition list as well if you're not already on that. And I also appreciate some of you guys are putting other examples for similar initiatives in the chat, which is great. It's always good to hear about other examples. It looks like Liz Alpern, hi Liz, has a question. $10 per meal enough to make this financially worthwhile for restaurants? Assuming yes, since it's up and running?
Yeah, it's a great question, Liz. I was just responding in the chat. Not for all restaurants. So the stipulations of the program, the $10 a meal, the local sourcing piece, the nutritionally rounded piece, filter out some restaurants, that's for sure. It's not for everybody. For the restaurants it does work for, it works really well. And I would say you would be surprised some of the restaurants that $10 a meal does work for. There are some really top-notch restaurants producing amazing meals, and the $10 is significant support for them.
Great. So, and one more question before we transition over to Eileen. There were a couple questions here about how you see this program maybe transitioning post-COVID. Do you see any other kinds of iterations existing?
That's such a great question. The statewide Vermont Everyone Eats team is really trying to puzzle on that right now. They've got a steering committee of, all the big food access voices and independent restaurant voices coming together and trying to think like, what is the secret sauce in here that can carry forth after the pandemic response crisis that we're in right now? What is there is something really, like I said, intuitive and clever about this, obviously as a response to crisis, as a crisis response. But what about it can we carry forth? What about this partnership? What about this? There's something there and we're trying to figure it out. So not there yet, but we'll definitely keep you guys posted.
All right, thank you so much. And I know there are other questions, so I'll encourage Lauren and Beth. Beth, do you want to wave? Beth, also from Vital Communities and the Upper Valley Everyone Eats. Maybe you guys can answer some questions in the chat too, but I encourage everybody, if you're interested to learn more, fill out that little Google form and we can make sure to keep you guys all in touch. So thank you so much, Lauren.
Thanks, guys.
Here. And I'd like to turn it over to Eileen. And Eileen, where are you? Let's see.
Right here.
There you are. Hi, good morning. So Eileen, I know I have a couple slides, so I'll go ahead and share my screen here so that you guys, let's see. Okay, and take it away, Eileen. Thank you so much for being here. Eileen is from the New Hampshire Food Bank and is gonna talk to us a bit about the New Hampshire Feeding New Hampshire program.
Well, I think, Erin, I think you've got our setting the stage.
Okay. You're not seeing the screen? Let's see.
We did, but they were the previous slides, not the one that I sent.
Oh, okay. I just need to, sorry about that.
That's all right.
I just need to forward the slide. Here we go. There. How's that? Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all. Eileen Laponis, New Hampshire Food Bank. We are very excited for, this was our first year that we had a statewide pilot of New Hampshire Feeding New Hampshire. We had a couple small pilots. Interestingly enough, it started with Heidi up in the North Country with the North Country Food Co-op. And then we had another small pilot in the western part of the state. What we really were looking to do is to emulate our neighbors in Vermont and Maine with the forward contracting that they do with their farmers. And so we're kind of taking baby steps to get there. Last year, we had $100,000 in funding that we used to go out to our agencies that we knew would be very good about reporting. This was our first year and could benefit from the produce and the fresh product that our local farmers can provide. And shout out to the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. They were very supportive of us in this project, giving us additional funds to help build the capacity of our agencies to be able to store more fresh products. Because when you really reverse engineer this problem of we want more fresh products who are food insecure, our agencies need to have the capacity to store them. They need the coolers, they need the freezers. So I really just want to give the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation credit for how much they supported this program. You can go to the next slide. Oh, before you do though, that cow on the front, for everybody who knows Helen Costello, the only person that retires to a farm in Maine, that's Helen's cow. Just want to give her credit. So with that $100,000, we had 74 farms participate and I think about 80 agencies. You can see that we're heavy on the produce there, but also, 5,000 pounds of local protein. We were thrilled with that. The goal is to make access to fresh local products available to everyone. That's equity. And so what we are doing is trying very hard to make sure that in every corner of the state, our food insecure who go to our agencies have access to local fresh products. It's the most nutrient dense because it's got the least carbon footprint. So the lower that is, the higher the nutrient is, the product we have going to our food insecure, and that's our goal. I think the next slide. Nope. I thought you had another one. Just to let you guys know, the demand is up about 44% for us. And we have been very fortunate with the USDA Farm to Family program. We've benefited from those boxes, but we are going to continue whether or not that program continues with the USDA. We have the funding that we're going to continue the mobile food pantries that we've been doing throughout 2021. So I just want to give everybody that reassurance. This engine is just going to keep going. And thank you all for your support of the New Hampshire Food Bank. There's so many partners on this list, and we cherish every one of you. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Eileen. So questions for Eileen about the New Hampshire Feeding New Hampshire program. Again, I think just another really amazing example of how we're trying to do both, help support food insecure families and individuals while also helping to support our local producers, food businesses, and create a thriving local food economy here in New Hampshire, and make sure everybody has access to that. So Eileen, you said that you're hoping to continue to do some forward contracting in this coming year. Is it next year?
We're going to double what we did last year. We've already raised over 200,000 for that. And then I think that if once we get that tightened up, because last year we got a late start, so I want one full growing season, and then I'd like to see forward contracting the following year, and that would be bringing product in here to the food bank that we would then redistribute.
Okay.
But I think enabling the local agencies with the local farmers is just the best. You know, both Vermont and Maine told us that once the farmers understand where the agencies are and that they're not going to let the food go to waste, they end up getting more in donations than what they actually purchase from the farmer.
Wow. Okay. Great. So any thoughts about the kinds of things that you'll be forward contracting for? Are those the winter squash, carrots, things like that, that you
Sure.
mentioned?
But we're also going to look for culturally appropriate products as well. I'd like to partner with Oris locally in town here in Manchester. We're definitely trying to make sure that everybody has access to the food that is appropriate to them, that they are familiar with. And we're doing our best to do that when in limited supply chains. It's been a little wonky this past year, but we're hoping for a strong growing season and to take advantage of it as much as possible.
Great, wonderful. Thank you. So if anybody has any more questions for Eileen about New Hampshire Feeding New Hampshire, please feel free to put those in the chat. It looks like, thanks, there's been some conversation in the chat with Lauren and Beth and folks. So that's wonderful to see as well. So thank you. Again, great examples of trying to create these situations where we're both supporting our local food economy, local producers, while also making sure that everybody has access to these fresh, healthy local food resources. It's wonderful to see. So I think as Heidi mentioned before, we're going to hear now from our colleagues at UNH Cooperative Extension, Sarah Oberle and Brooke Kelleher. They have been working really hard on trying to make sure that everybody knows about the amazing resources that are out there. So as Heidi mentioned in the beginning, even though we do have a lot of resources for folks to access food, very often communication, outreach, just knowing that those resources are even available is a big barrier for folks. And so I think this is one great example of how we're trying to find our way around that and try to make sure that everybody's aware of the incredible resources here in the state. So, so Brooke and Sarah, I will turn it over to you. And let's see, I'm gonna actually, I have to share my screen because I think you guys have some, you have some slides. So hold on one second.
Thank you, Erin. And thanks,
Sure.
Heidi, also for that great introduction before.
And we have that poll too. I don't know if that's
Oh,
something you can
yes.
get going, Erin.
Yeah, let me start that poll, sure. Let's see. Okay, I'm launching our poll. So you guys, if you haven't done a Zoom poll before, you should see a little question pop up on your screen.
Oh, this is exciting, seeing it happen in real time.
Seeing it happen in real time.
So essentially we're asking, are you aware of the New Hampshire Food Access Map? And I know this morning you all got to hear my voice on that little 90-second clip. So talked a little bit about that before.
Great, and votes are still coming in, but let's see, I think about 84% have voted. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, I'm going to close out that poll now and share the results.
Nice. Okay, so 37, yes, I've used the New Hampshire Food Access Map. 47, yes, I've heard of it. And 18%, no, I was not aware. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for doing that. And Brooke's going to kick us off a little bit and kind of explain more about how this started.
Yep. And of course, my internet is now saying it's unstable. So if anything goes out, just let me know, and I'm sure Sarah can help us out there. Well, so just to start us off, it was a year ago today. It was actually a year ago tomorrow, Friday the 13th, that we really got started on this whole project. We were in these emergency calls as soon as we realized that the pandemic was a huge issue, and everybody, all these partners were seeking information, and we realized that all of us did not have that information. We knew students were out of school, we knew that individuals were left without work, and that of course raised concerns that families, for the first time especially, would be experiencing food insecurity. And of course, with a lot of our pantries being run by senior volunteers, we weren't sure how those pantries would be able to keep doing their work. So we're all asking these same questions. How would these families be able to find pantries? Would these pantries have different protocols? And we were wondering, especially, what can we at Extension uniquely do to support this problem? And luckily, we reached out, Sarah and I reached out to Shane Bratt, who Heidi mentioned earlier, does mapping through UNH Extension. He's our geospatial specialist. And he brought forward this idea of using a program called ArcGIS, which maps, it collects data and maps and shares data in a really unique way. And he helped us we went off and collected all kinds of data and figured out how to present it to the people who need it most in an easy to use way. And of course, Heidi Barker helped us. She was our huge advocate and made it so that Sarah and I could spend so much time on this project. So that all started on March 13th, and just 3 weeks later, on March 31st, we released the first version of our map. And I'll actually share that in the chat for those who haven't had a chance to see it before. So that link will take you there if you're interested. And like this slide says, it has all kinds of resources on there. Right now, just a year later, we list over 375 food support sites in total. 240 of those are food pantries. And then there's also local food discounts, which is farms and small grocers that offer, that accept SNAP, and especially the ones that offer granted state market match and double up food bucks. We also have nutrition assistance offices, so people can sign up for SNAP or WIC or similar programs. Summer meals, so we partnered with the Department of Ed and list all the USDA summer feeding programs. And then we also have a give or donate tab, which the pantries were able to check off if they're accepting volunteers or donations. So it's a really great way for people to give back to their community. And at this point, a year later, it's been viewed about 35,000 times. So we know that people are using it, which is fantastic. And again, we're a year in, so we're really thinking of how we can move forward and make this better instead of the thing that we just turned around and did in 3 weeks. So your feedback and just honest feedback is super helpful for us to move forward. So if you want to go to the next slide, we have a few questions for you all. First off, if someone you know, either personally or through your work, if you work for an agency or any a pantry or whatnot, is experiencing food insecurity, what would you do? What resources do you use? How would you support them? And you can just write that in the chat.
So yeah, thanks everybody. I know because we have such a big group, we'll do most of this conversation in the chat, but like we were doing yesterday, this is a way that we can harvest information and that will be really valuable to Sarah and Brooke and their team as they continue to modify the map. So any ideas that you have that you'd like to share here, they will be using. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin, for adding to that. So you can think of, like it says on the screen, personally, if a neighbor, is struggling with food insecurity, or maybe you're a teacher and there's a student, might not be bringing lunch, or you work as a caseworker or anything. Like, what would you do if you came across a person and you knew they were dealing with food insecurity? Love all these things. Okay. And for time sensitivity, I'm going to let people continue to add to that. But if you would like to go to the next slide. Okay. So as Brooke mentioned, the current form we have is really kind of a map. And the idea was that people who were experiencing food insecurity could go on their phones or their computer in real time and say, I need food on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Where can I find it? And then we started to add more support systems. And as we did this and we started to share this tool and involve different stakeholders, we were also getting feedback. And we were also getting feedback from food pantries and people who were using this or kind of being that middle person using this. And they were just saying, it would be great if there was kind of like this one location that could include everything food access New Hampshire. We have things in all different places. We have DHHS, we have the SNAP website, we have WIC, and I know some other ones try to incorporate them. And then we also have all of our great incentive programs like Double Up Food Bucks and Grain Estate Market Match, and they're kind of all in a different place. So when you're working with someone who might be experiencing food insecurity, you're telling them to go here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then it becomes really overwhelming. So the idea after the map, we applied for a grant from the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation. And that was to kind of create this one-stop shop idea to kind of include like all-encompassing food access, granted state. So the mission is really to create an approachable, we've been calling it a one-stop shop, to connect granted staters to food support resources in New Hampshire. And so far we've kind of built like this little template and just things based on feedback that we've heard and kind of what's available in food support in New Hampshire. But we are also looking to hear from other partners, stakeholders, just granted staters of what this could include that would make it a very approachable, non-stigma, something a little bit different than we kind of already have that would make people actually go and look at these resources. So the target audience for this really is any New Hampshire resident in need of food support. And we're looking at this, not just our typical approaches as we think of people who work in the food access, food insecurity realm, but what if we work with doctors? And what if we work more with schools? Or what if we work more with businesses? They're touching these people and they're kind of working with them, not in that typical realm that we are. So what if we kind of approach it from a different angle? And then so far the resources we have in this, there are federal programs. So we have our SNAP and WIC and school meals from DOE, and we have our food incentive programs. And then we also have our map, which still includes kind of the pantries. So that is where we're going with this. And everyone kind of heard that before in my little spiel this morning. So Erin, if you could just maybe go to the next slide. So again, we're asking everyone just for some input. If you could write in the chat, if you were to refer someone or to actually use this one-stop shop, what would you want or need? So what would you like to see? And think big, like this could be anything. Like it doesn't have to be just kind of what we've been talking about. It could really be, maybe you've worked with someone and they were like, oh, I'd really like to have recipes on there, or I'd really like to have this. What will make it this really approachable, usable, simple and easy kind of one-stop location for people? So someone could write in the chat. That would be fantastic. Yay. Easy to navigate. And I'll also add with this grant, we're going to be doing usability studies. So working with people who are actually going to use it, and we have them do a couple of tasks, and essentially we have someone watch how they navigate and how they use something, and we're going to try to tweak it and make it a very easy, usable platform and figure it out. So okay. So that, I can keep this answer or this question up, and people can still write in the chat. But is there anything else, Brooke, that you wanted to add that I might have forgot, or Heidi?
I don't think so. I'm just really excited already seeing some of these responses.
Yeah.
A lot of it is things that we've talked about, but to hear what that biggest need and that first question we asked, if you haven't had a chance to answer yet, if you were to refer somebody, and this could be that automatic place that you send everybody, because you know it will have everything food access that somebody could need. But we're seeing a lot of that. I'm really liking the having somebody that you can immediately chat with, because that's, I think, a helpful thing.
Okay. So I think that's it for us, Erin. Just the last slide was, if you're interested in being part of, we're holding these kind of engagement sessions to have more discussions around this, you know, figuring out how to involve other stakeholders and partners and the community and kind of build this up and create this for New Hampshire. You can, I think Erin sent out a link where you just put your name and you sign up what you're interested in. You just click the New Hampshire Food Access Map, and
Yeah, and I'll pop that in the chat again. I think it's now really high up, so I'll put it down at the bottom of the chat now so people can find it easily.
Sorry, it probably didn't help. They were like, everyone write in the chat. And
get all that info. Wonderful. Okay. So let's, so I don't think you guys have any more slides. So why don't we open it up for questions now? And again, if folks have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Also feel free to sort of put up your hand raising and we can unmute you too. Looks like people are still typing ideas.
I love it. Thank you everyone for typing your ideas, your input. This is really valuable. This is fantastic. And if you do have a question, maybe just raise your hand, because everyone's kind of writing and it's pushing it down a little bit.
Yeah. So what is your timeline, Sarah, now for what you're thinking in terms of a rollout for the next iteration?
So we're starting kind of these engagement sessions right now. And we're doing sessions with schools and healthcare in the summer and fall. And of course, obviously the healthcare in schools, they're just like so impacted and overwhelmed with COVID that we definitely have to adapt to this. And our original idea was like, oh, we'll have these Zoom sessions, and everyone's just like, I'm so zoomed out, I don't even want to deal with another one. So we're trying to think of different ways to get input and feedback. So we're hoping to do our usability study and engagement sessions maybe up until like October, November, and then hopefully really implement and kind of create this site and maybe roll it out next year would be a goal.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us and giving us an opportunity to provide feedback and contribute. Definitely, I would encourage folks, again, check out that Google form and sign up if you'd like to keep involved with the process. Like all of the programs that we've heard about today, I think, collaboration is totally key to the success of this. Everybody's got to be working together. So thank you all for being in the room. So I think with our last few minutes, again, feel free to keep putting ideas in the chat. If you've got questions for any of our presenters today, feel free to put them in the chat. I want to just acknowledge that these were just 3 different examples of many, many examples of the ways that our food system has been pulling together and working to make sure that we're providing food access and trying to improve food security, especially in this really, really hard year. So I want to just acknowledge that. I'm sorry we didn't have time in 1 hour to kind of hear from all of you. But there are countless examples around the state. Hopefully you got to hear about some of them through the videos over the last couple of days. And I would encourage those of you who are here who want to continue to learn more and want to be more involved. One way to do that would be to get involved with our Food Access Coalition. I see Tiffany Dodier, my co-facilitator, is here. Do you want to wave, Tiffany? And actually, why don't I, let's see, I can give you, maybe Heidi, if you could find Tiffany and give her co-hosting privileges just in case she wants to jump in and chat. Just really briefly, the Food Access Coalition was an initiative that the Food Alliance and the New Hampshire Public Health Association started about last year, 1.5 years ago, with support from the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation. And we thought it was really, it was the time to bring together the public health communities, the food access and food system communities to really fill a gap that we were seeing in terms of policy advocacy in the state. And so one of the things that we've been doing is meeting monthly just to build relationships between partners who are working to improve food security and food access across the state, and to build our capacity to act as advocates for policy change. And not all of us can officially be advocates. For example, New Hampshire Food Alliance, which is part of UNH, we aren't, officially able to advocate, but we are in the business of bringing folks together, of creating learning opportunities, doing some research, sharing information. And so that's been kind of our focus. And again, on that Google link, if you're not already on our Google list, Tiffany does a great job of sending out announcements about critical legislation and how you can get involved to support policies. Also just information and trainings about how we can be better communicators, educators, and advocates throughout the state. We work with some really wonderful partners. Again, those folks who presented today, I see Laura Milliken of New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, who's a great leader in the advocacy space and is doing some wonderful work around communications and messaging to continue with this conversation of how communications and outreach is such an important part of food access and food security work. So I would encourage you guys to get involved. That's sort of one of the ways that you can continue to stay updated and meet others. Right now, we are trying to help support a bill that would provide some state funding for our Granite State Market Match and Double Up Food Bucks programs. And thus far, it's just been funded by federal grants and private philanthropic donations. And we're trying to get New Hampshire to get involved. And it looks like that bill has a good chance of passing this year. So we're really excited. Next year, we are hoping to support a farm to school bill. I don't know, Stacy, if you're here, if you want to wave. Oh, I do see Stacy there. Where we're going to encourage, thanks, Stacy, the state to kick in some funds to support local purchasing of local produce and farm products for schools. So that'll be another piece of legislation that we'll try to support next year as well. So at this point, Tiffany, unless there's anything else you'd like to add about the Food Access Coalition?
I would just encourage that you don't need to be an advocacy guru or whatnot. We do help with that, and there's a lot of lingo, and we got some feedback last time to keep up with the getting people more familiar with the lingo that's involved in advocacy. So anybody can speak to their legislator, and they're really happy to talk to you. So that's some of the things that we like to try and facilitate so that we can advocate for specific legislation, but also other policies.
Yeah, and I would just say again that part of the Food Access Coalition is about trying to, again, build our capacity and our collective voice for kind of policy transformation, but we're also there to just share information and catalyze collaboration in the food access space as well. So, so yeah, we definitely encourage you guys to get involved with that. I would say, yeah, at this point, we have some time if folks would like to have any other questions for any of our presenters. If you have any other examples of great food access stories or initiatives that you'd like to share, feel free to put those in the chat. And also, if you have any thoughts about sort of calls to action or what we could be doing right now as sort of this growing coalition of people who are interested in improving food access, improving access to local food, it would be great to hear from you. And I see Lauren, thank you for putting the presentation for your Everyone Eats presentation there in the chat. That's wonderful. Great. And Jess, I love your idea, community garden at the State House. I think that's one of the things that we didn't highlight today, but I think there are a lot of amazing efforts around gardening and, you know, encouraging food sovereignty and food self-sufficiency around the state. And I know Jess is involved in programs in Monadnock. Is there anything, do you want to pipe in, Jess? Do you know of any efforts actually right now working to get a community garden at the State House, or is this just your brilliant idea?
Not that I'm aware. I know that there are several very successful community garden models that have happened in Concord with different communities. And it's because it's something that I read about and I find myself interested in all of the time. I'm very aware of it. But I'm a big believer in, you know, hands in the ground in the most public ways possible. So yeah.
Love that idea. That's great. Thank you. And I see Andrea. I think Andrea has a question for Eileen. The Maine Coast Fishermen's Alliance participated in Maine Feeding Mainers. Do you know how that was funded? Or are you aware of that, Eileen?
I'm not aware of it. I can always find out from Kristen, my counterpart in Maine.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Is there a New Hampshire group that is looking to work with us?
Well, Andrea, do you want to pipe in? Where are you? Let's see. So Andrea is from our community supported fishery, New Hampshire community supported fishery. Andrea, I can't see you here. We have so many folks on the call. I'm trying to help you. Okay, you were just curious about funding for the program.
I'll find out and get back to her.
Thanks, Eileen. Great. Great. And Lisa Morin has another comment in the chat. Lisa's part of our network leadership team. The mall in Washington had a series of raised bed gardens designed using compostable materials. That's really great. I didn't know about that. Very cool. Wonderful. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you very, very much to our presenters, to Lauren, Brooke, Sarah, and Eileen, and to all the rest of you who I know are working hard in our communities as well. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll probably see you on Zoom somewhere else.